Hello, my name is Kerman, and this is the first in a couple of videos about Kerbal Space Program, answering the question, what exactly is Kerbal Space Program? What's it about and what you have to do in it? First question to answer, what exactly is Kerbal Space Program? Is very simple. Kerbal Space Program is a sandbox game, and in it you build your own creations, and then you try to fly them, for example into the orbit, or you try and fly them as a plane, reaching various goals. And make a long story short, you are the NASA of your own universe. What you have to do in Kerbal Space Program is very simple. You build and develop your own crafts, and then you try to achieve a goal which you have set yourself. Currently there is no story mode, no career mode, because it's an alpha. Currently it's in 0.21 alpha, and because it's an alpha there are also a few bugs, and some parts of the game are missing. For example, the career mode, but that's not a problem because you can make your own story yourself, like I do in my Let's Play. How to build your stuff is the next question. And this I'm going to probably split apart into two videos, because there are two different basics that I have to cover. So in the first episode we're going to build a plane. That's very simple, or rather, it's not. It's very simple and easy. Once you get the gist of it, it is. You need to understand that in order to have a successful craft, you have to have at least one part of the command section, which is parts here, the current tab I'm in. And for demonstration purposes, let's go and take a small cockpit. Then you need at least a tank that holds fuel. Otherwise, your craft won't fly. And you need at least an engine. Where are my turbojets? There's a turbojet. Or do I take this one? Let's take this one. And then you technically need to add wings and control surfaces, and you're ready. But before you do that, there are a couple of things you need to know. What I now added is the yellow and black ball is your center of mass, and the blue ball with the arrows, blue-black ball with the arrows, and the vectors pointing out, is your center of drag, or rather center of lift. And in order to have a stable craft, your center of, well, I'll demonstrate this. Your center of lift, it needs to be behind your center of mass. Otherwise your craft will just pull off, up, and tumble out of control, and this is something I'm going to demonstrate also in a couple of seconds. Okay, I added a few structural parts to make the plane longer. This way we have more space to play around with and to add wings and stuff, and that's what I'm now going to do. We don't need very fancy. I think that's too large. Yes. Let's go for that wing size. Add 2 wings. And I'm also going to add a few control surfaces, and I'm going to meet you then. Okay, here we go. So technically, this is a almost finished craft. When I turn it upside down, you'll see it still misses something. Landing gear. So this is the last thing we're going to add, and there's one thing you have to note. The wings, the engine, yeah, and the control surfaces are not stock, so you probably won't get them when you buy the game, except for if you download Taverios Pizzeria and Aerospace mod plugin, and also the V9 Aerospace plugin. So I know it's still a little, it's not what you want to hear, but please bear with it. It's how I play the game, and I'm not going to change it up that simple because I'm doing something else. Now I'm balancing out my center of mass, because if it's perfectly at a point where your fuel is and the center of the fuel mass or fuel tank masses, it is more stable, and therefore I'm adding a couple of things and stuff and play around with the craft. What I'm doing is more or less I'm adding dead mass to the structural mass to try and get this thing more where I want it to be. What I've successfully managed to do, and now I'm going to add a small gear bay at the front. That's hopefully correct. And also I'm going to add small gear bays on the wing. And that should fly very well. It's a little oh yeah. Once again, you can see that the center of mass of this craft is forwards of the center of lift. That is important for the craft to fly stable. Let's give this one the name Tutorial Plane 1. I know I'm not very creative. So, if I would then take out this, remove the structural piece, and re-add this, you would notice that the center of lift is in front of the center of mass. And also the center of mass is misaligned. But that's not the deal I want to get at, that the center of mass is not at the right point. If I then say if this is tutorial plane number 2, we can take a look at its flight characteristics. I can very much predict that it won't fly very well. It's probably incredibly unstable, and in all honesty, I'll probably kill my pilot once I let the plane fly. But we don't know yet. Let's see what it brings us. I'll see you at the runway when we then test this plane. Now it's the right way around. Save it again, and I'll see you at the runway. Welcome back. Before I'll ever launch this plane, I need to clarify 2 things. This design you're currently looking at is especially built to highlight what happens if you build a plane wrong. If you misalign the center of mass and the center of lift. It is not anything else. It is not built to fly stable. In fact, it's built to fly unstable. And this is something you need to know when you fly this plane. It is not built to be a good plane, or if you watch its abilities. And I think I forgot to build something in. First fail of the day. See you again when we have the finished plane to lift off. Well, design problem is solved. I forgot to put in intakes onto the plane. Well, now that we have solved one of the design issues, let's see what happens if you don't solve the other design issue, the center of mass problem. Okay, engine revs up, no problem. Gimbal is offline. Let's go. Yeah. And there you see it. I can almost not get this thing under control. I'm sorry, Jeb. This happens if you build your plane the wrong way. Don't do that. We're going to revert the flight, since I don't want it dead, Jebediah Kerman, and retry that. Orbital plane number, tutorial plane number 1. Everything is okay. Okay, let's fly that thing. Okay, it's here again. Why do you need to have the center of lift behind the center of mass? That's an interesting question. If you're familiar with forces, like gravity or drag, you can physically calculate the center of it, like the center of gravity, where you can put something against this point and the object you're trying to hold will remain exactly stable above. This is the calculated center where a force acts on. And if the center of drag is behind the center of mass, the momentum of the craft will always stabilize the craft, because it will drag in front of the center of drag, which pulls the craft backwards, and the momentum tries to pull the craft forwards. This is why you need your center of drag, center of lift, behind your center of mass. That was hopefully understandable. If not, just ask what you did not understand about the concept of these two in the comments, and I'll gladly answer these. And now let's try and look at the difference. How different they fly. It has such a rocket start, like the first craft. Now let's pull up. And one of the wings is a little bit instably connected. I maybe need to place a strut or two. But other than that, the craft flies very stable. Does it not? Oh, I forgot to set up the control surfaces in the proper way at this one. Who cares? As you see, it flies very stable. This is because every time I let go of the control surfaces, the craft's own momentum rewrites it into the airstream. This also happens when I when I yaw with the craft, cause the center of lift to vertically stabilize the craft is also behind its center of mass. This is very important for building planes. They need to fly stable, and therefore you need to get your center of lift and your center of mass right. Another thing about landing is you need to be slow enough, and you shouldn't land too aggressively. Now that we've managed to successfully build a plane, which for some reason has a very low air resistance, let's turn around with the plane. Whew, that was a close one. And let's try and re-land this sucker at the runway. I'm always amazed of how well some planes seem to glide if you just build these things right. Let's get it in, let's get it down. Let's add the brakes. And we could, of course, remedy a few of the poor design choices we made in this one, but okay, that was a little hardware assisted braking. But all in all, the pilot is fine. So I'd say that was a rather successful run, and I'll show you how the plane will act once I have set up the control surfaces and everything, and we can fly it properly. Till then, okay, I've now added a couple of structural parts to stop that waggling, and let's try and see if it flies differently. You'll never know. Yeah, it doesn't stop, it doesn't wiggle and waggle like this. Very good. Okay, now to setting up the control surfaces, and we'll have an actual test run. So, now that everything is set up, each control surface acts independently. Let's sum up what you need for a plane. And let's make a small test flight then. You need at least one cockpit, at least one fuel tank, at least one engine, one vertical control surface. I don't know if that's the right word for it. One horizontal control surface, and two horizontal control surfaces, and two roll control surfaces. For stability purposes, I added 2 of these, and I added a few structural parts to make the plane fly more stable. Oh, and you need at least 2 wings of the wing parts. Depending on how heavy your craft is, you can make it bigger if you need to, so that it will lift off and fly. And that's it. Then it should fly perfectly stable, very easily controllable, and do what you require your craft to do. So you see this one here flies exactly how I want it to. Yawing works perfectly. Speeding works perfectly. Controllability is very good. And for fun, oops, you can fly it out of the inside, which is a little harder to do than actually not flying it from the inside. I think that's fairly good to do. That does it for how to build a plane. I've highlighted what you need for it and what you need to look at to have a successful plane. Once again, I'll highlight the center of mass and the center of lift. And little pro tip, you see, once I let them disappear, this is the center of mass, this is the center of lift. You see this flammable sign here. This is a fuel tank. The other two, oops, are not. I need to reload the design. Okay. And this reloadable flammable sign here means this is the only thing in the entire craft that possesses fuel. You see, I've put the center of mass almost as exactly as I could where the center of the mass of the fuel is. And therefore, all the mass that's drained while we are flying gets drained from there, and this way the center of mass won't really shift while the fuel is depleting, and the craft will always fly and continue to fly stable. Even though it depletes fuel and gets lighter and stuff, this is a pro tip for if you want to really fly places and your fuel gets drained and drained. This prevents you from deteriorating flight characteristics. It's not a must to do so, but it's recommended. That's all I'm going to say about planes. Building rockets is going to be in a different tutorial video in another episode.